This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm NIZZAHONGIFT, and it's Wednesday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Among the 340 or so MTG Top 10s I've done, I've already covered every two-color pair, and I've also done a few of the shards and wedges. Today, we're looking at the Jun shard. The Jun colors are black, red, and green, and to be eligible for this video, a card had to have a Jun color identity. This means that all three of those mana symbols have to appear somewhere on the card with no mana symbols of other colors. This means that a card has a Jund identity if it has a mana cost that costs those three colors, but it can also get there by being a monocolored card that has the two other colors somewhere in the text box. In all, there are 55 cards with a Jund identity, and in this video, we'll talk about the 10 that have left the biggest mark on competitive Magic. Here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A Pro Tour, Players Tour, Mythic Championship, Mythic Invitational, Legacy or Vintage Championship top 8 is worth 2 points, and a Grand Prix or Magic Fest top 8 is worth 1 point. At number 10, it's Scarland Thorinex. This 3-mana 2/2 has a free sacrifice ability, and those always tend to be pretty powerful. Instead of being limited by mana and the number of creatures you have, Scarland Thorinex can simply just gobble up all of your creatures if that's what you need him to do, and he gets really big in the process. He was played in Jun decks and Extended, where he was played alongside Kitchen Finks, and another Thorinex we'll see higher up on this list. Being able to get 2 counters and some life out of Kitchen Finks tends to be a pretty good deal, especially while your creature gets bigger. While it was featured in some Jun decks of the time, it was not a fixture in them at all and only managed 2 Grand Prix top 8s. Scarland Thorinex hasn't gained any points since 2010. New Jun cards are very likely to bump it off of this list. At number 9, it is Bartel Runax. It has the same score as Scarland Thorinex, but I gave it the edge because it has a top 8 from a Pro Tour. Bartel is one of the first Jun cards ever, as it made its debut in Legends, the very first set to feature multicolored cards. By today's standards, Bartel is not that great. A 6-mana 6/5 with Vigilance that has Shroud versus Auras is not especially good, especially when you're paying 3 different colors of mana for it. Sure, it can't be targeted by aura-based removal spells, but context really matters. For its time, Bartel was quite the imposing creature, even considered efficient. That is how it gained a top 8 at Magic's very first competitive event, the World Championship, back in 1994. Unsurprisingly, it has been completely idle for the subsequent 20+ years, and I feel really confident in saying that won't change anytime soon. At number 8, it is Destructive Flow, an enchantment that hates on non-basic lands. Black, red, and green are the colors where land destruction is the most common, so it makes sense to have a Jund enchantment like this. Obviously enough, this is not especially good in a deck with lots of non-basic lands, nor is it good against a deck without any non-basic lands. However, against the right deck, it can be devastating. The Extended of 2007 was a format where people were playing very few basic lands, and players seeking to take advantage of that fact turned to Destructive Flow. It was a sideboard card in Zoo decks, but it was also featured in the main board of Flow Rock, a deck built with the intention of disrupting the opponent with Destructive Flow as well as various discard effects. All of its points came in 2007, and these days there are way better ways to hate on non-basic lands, so I don't really see it gaining any more points in the future. At number 7, it is Flesh and Blood, a split card with a Jund identity. Like most split cards, both sides of Flesh and Blood are pretty situational, but the value of having 2 options is very real, and in a way, you even have 3 options here because this split card comes with Fuse, allowing you to cast both halves together. The Flesh side of the card is the less impressive one, as it asks for a whopping 5 mana to exile a creature from the graveyard to give one of your creatures some counters. That's not a good deal at all, but luckily the Blood half of the card is quite good. 2 mana to have your creature do damage equal to its power to anything is a pretty nice deal, and obviously if you cast both halves together, you kind of have a chance at turning this into a fireball to your opponent's dome, and that is some real upside. Flesh and Blood was played in Gruul aggro decks while it was in Standard. At number 6, it is Hit and Run, another Jund split card. This one does not have Fuse, but like most split cards, it does have those 2 situational effects. They can be pretty powerful in the right situation, but you're not always going to see that situation. The hit side of the card is really good against opponents relying on a particular creature or artifact, and the run side is great at helping your board find lethal out of nowhere. Hit and Run gain points in Jund and Rakdos decks and Ravnica block constructed. Before we get to the top half of this MTG Top 10, I want to tell you about this video's special sponsor, Dragon Champions. While I spend most of my free time playing Magic, as you might imagine, I have been going out of my way to find time to play Dragon Champions. In the game, you put together a team of heroes and take them into battle in turn-based combat. Each hero in the game is unique. There are a variety of races, characteristics, and abilities, and I have the most fun coming up with the best ways to combine the different heroes into an optimal team. Right now, my favorite hero is definitely Rantha. She's an orc who wields a bow and has an animal companion, the humorously named Battlepoo. She can do big damage with her arrows, and she can of course summon Battlepoo, who immediately taunts enemies, allowing your other heroes to avoid damage for a few turns. She's also a great team leader if you're putting together a team from her faction. Other heroes from clans increase their damage output, and she also gives special bonuses to orcs and goblins in particular. This makes her a great team leader if you find yourself with a lot of good clan heroes. There is a ton to do in this game between the rich campaign mode, events, and PvP like the tournaments or the arena. At the same time, it isn't overwhelming, and you can kind of focus in on what you most like to do when you have time to play it. And there's tons to do, so there's something for everyone. And it's free to play friendly, unlike a lot of mobile games. The developers of Dragon Champions were nice enough to provide a free gift for my viewers. If you use my promo code NIZZAHONGIFT in the next 30 days, and if you're under level 15 in the game, you get the following: 500 Drak coins, 250,000 gold, 500 energy, and the new hero, Corcream. Corcream is from the clan's faction, so he goes great with Rantha. He's pretty strong, coming with the ability to stun enemies and do massive damage to an entire opposing team. You can find a link to download Dragon Champions in the description, so if you haven't yet, you should definitely check out Dragon Champions. Let me know in the comments whether you like the game. Alright, let's get back to our list. At number 5, it is Thunderscape Battlemage. It's part of a pretty cool cycle of battle mages from Planeshift, all of which are monocolored but have kicker costs of 2 other colors. The Battlemage starts as a vanilla Grey Ogre, which is terrible, but if you have extra mana to pump into it, it gains some nice into the battlefield triggers. If you pay the black kicker cost, you have a 5 mana 2/2 that makes your opponent discard 2 cards. If you pay the green kicker cost, you have a 4 mana 2/2 that destroys an enchantment. And if you pay both, you have a 6 mana 2/2 that does both of those things, which in the right situation can be a 4-for-1. In block, it was played in a deck that utilized Crypt Angel to rebuy Enter the Battlefield abilities, and obviously kicking a Battlemage more than once could be pretty devastating. Block also featured Yawgmoth's Agenda decks, giving it a good target for the enchantment destruction effect. It also gained points in Standard, where the fact it could blow up Fires of Yavimaya and Saproling Burst was particularly useful. Thunderscape Battlemage has never gained any points since rotating out of Standard, but it is a card people should be playing more in their Jund EDH decks. At number 4, it is Broodmate Dragon, a Jund dragon that gives you 2 dragons for the price of 1. 6 mana for 8/8 worth of flying stats across 2 bodies is a pretty nice deal. The fact you get 2 bodies means that spot removal isn't enough to deal with this problem. Your opponent needs to use a board sweeper, or otherwise 2-for-1 themselves to take down both dragons. Broodmate Dragon saw a lot of success in Standard, in particular in Jund decks, which at the time were mid-range decks loaded up with 2-for-1 effects, so the dragon was perfect for the deck and functioned as the late-game win condition. At number 3, it is Sprouting Thorinex. This Jund creature is amazingly efficient. Has a 3 mana 3/3 that leaves behind 3 1/1 Saproling tokens when it dies. That's a ton of value for the mana cost. Sure, he might be somewhat challenging to cast, but it wasn't a huge hurdle for the Jund decks he was played in while in Standard. He was also pretty sweet to sacrifice to Scarland Thorinex, which we saw at number 10 on this list. Sprouting Thorinex hasn't gained any points since rotating out of Standard. At number 2, it is Corvolt, Fey Cursed King. He is tied in points with Sprouting Thorinex, but has more Pro Tour top 8s, so I gave him the edge. Corvolt was printed originally for a Commander deck, but in Throne of Eldraine, the Commander deck cards were also legal in formats that the main set was legal in, and that's been a big boon for Corvolt, who has already seen multi-format success. Corvolt is a powerful sacrifice engine. All on his own, he amounts to being a 5 mana 5/5 with flying that lets you sacrifice a permanent and draws you a card, and then he also lets you draw a card and sacrifice a permanent to make him bigger every single time he attacks. Corvolt had the fortune of being printed at a time when lots of powerful sacrifice synergies were available in Standard, Pioneer, and Historic, and he's been able to parlay that into a ton of top 8s. In all 3 of those formats, Corvolt is played in Jund sacrifice decks, alongside cards like Mayhem Devil, which gives you more of a payoff for sacrificing stuff, and Woe Strider, which lets you sacrifice creatures for no mana. Those are just a few of the many sacrifice cards that are available to power Corvolt. Another key card for the deck, Cauldron Familiar, was banned out of Standard because the deck was doing so well, but the core of the deck is still intact in Historic and Pioneer, and I imagine Corvolt is going to continue to gain points there. Because of that, I think he has a pretty good chance at surpassing the number 1 card on this list, which for now is Jun Charm. Like all charms, Jun Charm is a modal card with 3 options. In this case, Jun Charm can hate on graveyards, pyroclasm the board, or make one of your creatures bigger. Like most modal cards, it isn't very efficient at doing any of those individual things, but its multiple uses make it a good card. While it's played in sideboards a lot and brought in against opponents that are especially devastated by pyroclasm and or exiling the graveyard, it is played in the main deck about half the time. In Standard and Modern, it was played in Jund mid-range decks. In Modern, it has also been featured in the sideboard of Living End. It also has a single Pro Tour top 8 from Extended in 2010, where it was also played in a Jund deck. Jun Charm doesn't have any points since 2016, and Corvolt is only 10 points behind. It will be interesting to see whether he reaches the number 1 spot in the long run. Well, those are the 10 Jun cards that have had the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to buy any of them, in the description you can find direct links to each of them within the Card Kingdom store. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to catch future MTG Top 10s, do me a favor and subscribe and turn on notifications. If you need to catch up on the ones I've already done, you should see the playlist on your screen now. Thanks for watching.